Keep in mind that this is a commission piece. The color palette was chosen by the person who commissioned the work. So let's get right into the project and keep things simple. I won't extend the video any longer than I have to, just because a lot of what I'm showing you is repetitious. And yes, you do have to start with the figure being taken apart. It's best to do so because you can mask off the areas that you need, and in this case I am going to use black dye on parts of this figure. The other parts will have to be painted. So let me show you what I did to achieve the result that you see in the thumbnail. So to begin with, yes, removing the belt, saving it, keeping it aside, I added liquid mask to the emblem because I don't want to damage it with any kind of paint. Now I took my Dremel tool and I dremeled around the cowl, and you'll see why in just a moment. And this just proves the fact that every Batman figure is different, and on this case, that torso is a solid piece of plastic. This is the wrist peg, which I ended up using black dye, and as you can tell, it really doesn't take it in completely, so I still had to paint it. The shorts, however, or the trunks, did take the black dye really well. In, well, let's say 90%, because I still had to use paint to cover up most of that tinge of blue that was actually showing through. Same thing with the head. It takes the dye very well, but not 100%. And yes, I did use liquid mask on the face. So now it's time to go on to the actual result. This is what it looks like fully painted, and yes, I did remove the cape and I did fill in the gap that's in the middle of the back, and I had to touch it up and match the paint. And this paint has a lot of yellow in it. A lot of yellow to match that gray tone. Now this is the reason why you want to use your Dremel tool to cut around that cowl. That cowl is part of the actual torso. It does not come off. If you want your cape to look good, you'll need to cut into the plastic. Not all the way through, because you don't want to cut it off. You just want to cut a groove into it for this purpose. Let me show you. I've seen a lot of people adding capes to this figure, and they just add them on like this. Okay, if you're okay with that, that's fine. But if you want it to look even better, that groove now allows you to pull the fabric into it, making it look like the cape is coming out from underneath the cowl. Now you have to use a scrap piece of fabric because you want to be able to cut it correctly and then transfer that opening to your actual cape. Look what happens when you pull it down in the front. It looks just that much more believable. So instead of having a cape that looks like you cut a pillow sham and you put it on top, well, this looks so much nicer. And then of course, glue it down to your preference. If you want to add a wire, fantastic. No wire, it's still going to look good. But you got to use that extra piece of fabric to cut out the oval small enough so you can stretch it without causing stress marks in the fabric. If you cut it too big, then it's just going to be too loose. Once you have the opening that is correct, then you can transfer that to the cape. If you don't do that, you may cut the cape too large or too small or off to the side, and it's just going to look bad. By doing this, you ensure that your cutout on your cape is correct. That way you don't have to cut a second or third cape. In the end, you can have it looking like this, coming out from underneath the cowl. And then of course, you can then glue it down in the back, along the sides and the front, and let it dry until it's fully dry so you can actually manipulate the figure. But just let me show you what I had to do that. If you want to use glue, you have to put the glue inside that groove. You do not want the glue on the outside because it's just going to look messy. If you're using super glue, you got to be very careful because super glue will dry instantly and you will not be able to manipulate the cape to move it around and adjust it. If you're using fabric tack glue or a similar type glue, it will dry slower. It does become tacky and it will hold, but it will dry slower. Once it's fully dry, it's there to stay. But this allows you to move the cape around and adjust it until you have the correct look. With a small applicator, you want to apply the glue on the inside and then stretch the cape over to have this result. I will now leave you with some video of the finished product. If you have any questions, of course, put them down in the comments there and I'll get to you as soon as possible. With as much as I have to do and with work, I only have a few hours to do this and produce these videos, so they will no longer be as long as they were before. Enjoy the rest of the clip, and we'll see you here next time. Oh yeah, I forgot to show you this. A couple of head swaps. This body works out really well as a base for other future Batman projects. Let's see which one you like.